But I think Bitcoin will either follow its historical cycle, which would have it increase in price, achieve the prior all-time high sometime towards the end of this year, and then new all-time highs towards the end of next year. That's if it follows historical patterns. Global liquidity also contributes to Bitcoin price. We're seeing the Fed will be easing, other central banks will be easing, global liquidity will increase likely at the back half of this year. That will also help the narrative around Bitcoin.
가상자산 업계에서는 장기적으로는 비트코인의 시세가 오를 것으로 전망하고 있습니다. 당장은 비트코인의 시세가 하락세일지 몰라도 이는 단기적인 추세일 것이라 예측하고 있는데요. 특히 반감기를 앞두고 다시 한번 비트코인의 시세가 폭등할 것으로 보는 전문가들도 있습니다. 미국 CNBC와의 인터뷰에서 프레드 티엘은 상승 시기를 올해 말쯤이라고 예상한다는 발언을 했습니다. 그런데 프레드 티엘은 이전에 비트코인은 급등하지 않을 것이라고 부정적인 의견을 낸 적이 있었는데요. 두 번의 반감기처럼 가격이 오르면 우리 채굴자들에게 매우 이익이 될 것이지만 그럴 일은 없을 것이라고 잘라 말했습니다. 그는 비트코인의 거래 가격은 반감기보다 유동성 주기와 더 밀접하게 관련되어 있고 아마도 달러가 붕괴되면 우리가 구원받을 수 있을지 모르겠지만 그렇지 않는 한 우리는 한동안 비트코인 보유고를 탕진하게 될 것이라고 덧붙여서 말했는데요. 하지만 2024년 ETF 승인 영향에 비트코인 급등에 대한 생각이 바뀐 것 같은데요. 미국 CNBC와의 인터뷰에서 프레드 티엘은 상승 시기를 올해 말쯤이라고 예상한다는 발언까지 했습니다. 지금 비트코인에 대해 투자할지 말지 고민하시는 분이 있다면 지금 인터뷰가 어느 정도 해답이 될 것 같습니다.
And the big hope around the ETF, what's really underpinned the big rally in Bitcoin we saw last year and into this year, is this idea that an ETF could bring in a new wave of investors, big institutional investors as well. And it's a similar narrative we heard when Bitcoin futures hit the market a few years ago. But why is this? We didn't really see that materialize in a big way with futures. Is this any different?
Well, the problem with the futures is it resets every month. And so when you look at the fee structure and the rollover, effectively you're paying a very high fee for exposure to Bitcoin. With the spot ETF, you have a number of advantages. One is very low fees. Compared to GBTC, for example, the 2% fee they charge today will now go down substantially if they have to compete with other funds that are charging 20 basis points, 40 basis points. Compared to the 200 basis points they're charging. An interesting subtlety that most people don't get is GBTC has to sell about $200 million worth of Bitcoin a year to cover their fee, which now they would not have to do. So there'll be a little bit less supply in the marketplace, which would help the price. But essentially, the ETF really provides access to institutional investors, retirement accounts, the many trillions of dollars that are locked up. Potentially a small little allocation to Bitcoin will happen, and because there's only a finite number of Bitcoin, most Bitcoin is locked up in long-term holders. There's very little liquidity in the Bitcoin market. It's really only about 2 million Bitcoin a day are traded, so we believe the ETF will only be positive.
And Fred, just moving topic to another big event for the industry, and that is the halving, the Bitcoin halving slated for around April time. This is when the rewards to miners are reduced. You're one of the biggest miners in the world. What does this mean for your business?
It's really all about becoming much more efficient. So our strategy over the past few years has been to energize as much capacity as we can to grow. We did that through an asset-light model where we work with third parties. Now we've shifted more into an optimized business model, which is about continuing to grow but optimizing our cost structure. So we recently did an acquisition, which will be closing here hopefully end of this week, early next week, where we're essentially vertically integrating, lowering our cost structure substantially. And we'll continue to do that over the future here, leading into the halving, consolidating the industry and lowering our cost structure.
And is this going to allow you to be profitable this year then?
Yes. I mean, the goal is always to be at least gross margin profitable. Because we're a public company, you always have certain expenses that can sometimes make it harder to be net income profitable, but certainly from an adjusted EBITDA basis here.
And with these acquisitions, have you been able to lower the price effectively that Bitcoin needs to be at for your business to be profitable?
Yeah, so if you look at this latest acquisition, the Bitcoin we mine at that site, our cost structure will drop by upwards of 20 to 30% actually because of that.
And so we've got the ETF, we've got the halving. What does this all mean for Bitcoin's price? We've seen a huge rally last year. Is all of this already priced in?
Well, I think definitely part of the ETF is priced in, so buy the rumor, sell the news. But I think Bitcoin will either follow its historical cycle, which would have it increase in price, achieve the prior all-time high sometime towards the end of this year, and then new all-time highs towards the end of next year. That's if it follows historical patterns. Global liquidity also contributes to Bitcoin price. We're seeing the Fed will be easing, other central banks will be easing, global liquidity will increase likely at the back half of this year. That will also help the narrative around Bitcoin.
이런 급변하는 비트코인 시장에서는 다양한 정보도 중요하지만 가장 중요한 것은 투자의 전략과 노하우인데요. 하지만 투자를 하는데 필요한 전략과 노하우는 아무도 알려주지 않습니다. 그래서 구독자분들을 위해 저희가 책을 준비했는데요. 실제로 이 책은 현재 인터넷에서 판매되고 있는 책이며 무려 3만 원대에 판매가 되고 있습니다. 제가 여러분께 이 책을 무료로 나눠드리는 이유는 이 책을 통해서 많은 구독자분이 조금이나마 투자에 도움이 되셨으면 하는 마음에 준비했고 제 사비로 구독자 한 분 한 분께 나눠드리면서 채널을 키우기 위해 투자를 하는 것입니다. 010-5886-4840으로 구독이라고 문자를 보내주시면 한 분 한 분 빠짐없이 모든 분께 책을 무료로 제공해드리겠습니다. 현직 비트코인 투자 전문가의 전략과 노하우를 무료로 배워볼 수 있는 좋은 기회이니 이 혜택을 모든 분이 누리시고 저희 채널을 많이 사랑해주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 010-5886-4840으로 구독이라고 문자를 보내주시고 책 한 권씩 무료로 받아가셔서 구독자분들이 투자하시는데 큰 도움이 되셨으면 좋겠습니다. 지금까지 시청해주셔서 감사합니다. 구독과 좋아요, 알람 설정 부탁드립니다. 저는 계속해서 유익한 해외 코인 뉴스를 빠르게 전달하도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.